Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 8 of Songsmith. In today's episode, we're going to be covering the difference between skill and gear, and how, depending on what you're focused on, can either hinder or enhance how well you're making music. Super excited for this episode, and I cannot wait for you to hear it. So let's dive right in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Songsmith. I'm your host, Keaton Williamson, and my goal is to help equip you to be the best musician you can be. The purpose of this show is to give you the knowledge it takes to be a successful songwriter, producer, and indie artist, while also honoring God in whatever music you create. We all want to be successful in this crowded space, so join me as we explore what it takes to be a songsmith.
Before we jump into the topic of this episode, I just want to say I'm recording in a different room than I normally do, so if it's a little more echoey than normal, that's why. It's later in the evening when I'm recording this, so I didn't want to go out to the treehouse today. It's got some stuff that will help dampen the sound, but it's nothing crazy, so if you hear that reverb, that echo, that's part of the reason. So, what is the difference between skill and gear? Well, obviously, you can probably pull that apart. Skill is the work you put in to make yourself better at something, whereas gear is like the equipment and items you use to do whatever it is you do, in our case, music. It's really easy to fall into the mentality that thinking, oh, having a better microphone, a better guitar, a better whatever, better computer will make us better at what we do. While there is some truth to that having a better computer, a better microphone, whatever it is, will help aid us, whether that's a faster computer, a more sensitive and, fine-tuned or really sensitive microphone that can pick up different ranges. Those things can all make things better, but really at the heart of creating and making, to be good and be able to use those things to their fullest, you have to have the proper skills to use those things. For instance, with a bad singer, if you have a really cheap microphone and record yourself, it probably won't sound great because it's kind of a cheap microphone, and then they're also not a great singer. However, if you were to get like a $5,000 microphone, that's not going to change anything. In all honesty, you'll probably hear the bad part of their singing even more because it's even more clear. The same goes for any sort of instrument. If you want to learn keyboard and you get kind of a cheaper keyboard or whatever and start playing it and you're not that good, getting a more expensive, better sounding keyboard with like tons of sounds and tones and everything is not going to change how you play. You're still that same new keyboard player. What I'm trying to drive across is that jumping right in and spending tons and tons of money on equipment just for the sake of saying, oh, I have such and such microphone, I have such and such guitar, I have such and such this or that, isn't what's going to change how you do things. Well, I do have some pretty good equipment and definitely have invested a lot of money in both podcasting and music equipment. I started out with barely anything, and what I have now has been accumulated over quite a long time, probably around 2 years since I started getting my first equipment, from the time I started learning guitar to getting a new guitar, getting my audio interface, my microphones. It's taken a while. It wasn't just overnight. I spent $5,000, $4,000. I haven't spent that much on music equipment, but the idea there. I didn't go out and blow tons and tons of money all at once. I've slowly added to what I had and first learned with what I had. My audio interface came with Ableton, which is what I use to record my podcast as well as any music work I do. It came with Ableton 11 Lite, which is the most basic version. I can only record 8 tracks, which is a little bit of a hindrance, but I need to learn how to use the program better before I move on to a better version of Ableton or something like FL Studio, Logic Pro, any of the other big or even just better versions of the program I already have. If I don't know the base of how my program works at its core, then getting more fancy and high-tech or better versions isn't going to help me. It's probably just going to overwhelm me and get me stressed out because I see all these buttons and I have no idea how they work. I know for a while I struggled with this because I do want a better program, but I also have been coming to the understanding that, again, like I've said, getting a better program or better equipment isn't going to change how good I do with what I have. If all you have is GarageBand and a voice memos app on your phone and GarageBand's on your computer, that's more than enough to get you started on making your own music. The voice memos app with the microphone on an iPhone is honestly pretty good for what it is, and you can record some decent vocals and maybe some instruments and put those into GarageBand on a computer, your iPad, or even your iPhone, and then use the in-app instruments to help create a song. In all honesty, GarageBand is just kind of the basic version of Logic Pro. It doesn't have all the crazy fancy plugins or anything, but still, it works very similarly, just at a more basic and novice level. So if you can learn how to use that, then you can move on to Logic Pro, or take some of the things you've learned and add to that by moving to a more fancy program or a better microphone in the future. If you don't know how to use the basic stuff, then you're not going to be able to understand the fancy stuff right off the bat. It's going to be overwhelming. Another thing to touch on is, while there's all these videos on YouTube and maybe podcasts talking about the equipment you need or the equipment you just have to have, and a lot of the times it talks about these things that are, a little more expensive. They're the name brands with the high-end microphones, high-end headphones that make the prices go way up. Or even just the fact that they're a really nice microphone that you don't necessarily need. Because when you get into music, if you take the time to research, and it doesn't even take that much research to find, that there is some good microphones, some good headphones for a very budget price. The microphone I'm using right now is $50. It's the Audio-Technica AT-RX 2100, I think is what it's called. It's a dynamic microphone, and it's really good quality, and it's great for podcasting. Whereas my condenser microphone is the MXL 990. I have the Blizzard one, which was just on sale. It's a different design of it. That was only $100, and it's amazing. It's incredible what that microphone can pick up for a pretty cheap option. It's really well built. It's got a metal casing. Overall, really solid microphone for relatively cheap. Obviously, $100, depending on how much money you bring in, what age you are, might sound like more or less. But regardless, you can agree that $100 for a microphone that is pretty darn good is a good deal. So it's not like you even have to spend that much to get some decent equipment to get you off the ground. But again, if you don't have that much money, or you're not willing to spend that much money just yet, you have, most of the time, the things around you are enough to get you started. GarageBand is a great alternative to having some more fancy programs. Or if you're a Windows user or don't have an iPhone, using a Windows computer, whatever, you can get something like Audacity. I've never used it, but I know it's highly recommended as a free program you can get. And I know that there's some more out there if you take some looks. Or even if you want to mess around online with things like Soundtrap, which is a Spotify-owned online DAW, which stands for Digital Audio Workspace. The website, similar to other programs, gives you the ability to use your letter typing keyboard as a way to play instruments and whatnot, assigning each of them with a different note. So that also comes in handy if you don't have any sort of piano or whatever you can plug into your computer. It's got a lot of free effects. You can pay for it, but if you're just learning, it's more than enough with just the free version to learn what you're doing. And if you really want to get into it, and if you're really understanding it, then there are some different effects and fun things you can do to your voice, to the instruments, to adjust it and make it sound the way you want. Now, don't just throw them on there until you understand some of the basics of how they work. But at the same time, you can do a lot by just getting your hands dirty and messing with things. But as you're doing that, try and understand why whatever the thing is doing that. If you can learn the principle, then you can apply that principle to whatever else you're doing in the future, which becomes really handy as you understand more in-depth audio editing and whatnot. This may sound really complicated, and it's not that bad, but at the same time, I want to say this. I don't know that much about effects or any sort of like plugins and whatnot, so don't feel like, oh, he knows so much about these things, because I really don't know that much. As I've been stressing for the last while, I haven't really gotten into the recording side of music just yet because I've been busy. It's been a little bit difficult with just, time constraints and lack of knowledge. But I want to learn, especially in this coming summer as I have a little more free time, and just getting my hands dirty, practicing, getting things wrong, and understanding what I did wrong and learning from that. A lot of the best learning comes when you're just, getting your hands dirty, doing the thing you want to do, recording the music, recording instruments, whatever, and then understanding how that works and refining your craft. And then maybe you see something that you're like, oh, that's not so good. So then you practice and make that thing better. And then you move on to another thing you want to make better. And slowly those things add on top of each other until you start to get pretty good at recording music and, creating it within a DAW or whatever your choice may be. Another thing I wanted to bring up is that skill versus gear. Not only do you not need very much to get started. In fact, you, again, have a lot of what you need to get started at your own house or whatever. But trying to chase after having said microphone, said headphones, computer, program, whatever, can honestly be a sign of discontentment. You're chasing after the name brand thing or what this artist has rather than focusing on what you have in front of you and how you can get better at that moment. It's discontentment with where you're at, and it's more focused on the equipment, not the music. While this isn't specifically about equipment, there's a song by Old Dominion, a country band, where it's called No Such Thing as a Broken Heart. And one of the lines is, chase after the dream, don't chase after the money. Obviously, that can be applied totally to music, but if I were to alter that a little bit, chase after the desire to make music, not just having the newest, fanciest equipment. Being content with where you're at and doing it for the love of the craft, not just to continually move forward and have more expensive things and be like, oh, I'm finally at this level. Because in all honesty, getting a new piece of equipment isn't going to make you feel better. I mean, you'll maybe be excited for a short time for sure. I've been excited when I get new stuff, but it doesn't change the fact that it takes work to make this music and understand how it works, how these pieces of equipment work. I'll also make sure to link that song below. That way you can listen to the song. Now, even though this episode is mainly talking about why you should really focus on using what you have rather than spending tons of money, let's say you have started to get these things down and understand that, hey, I feel pretty confident using the Voice Memos app on my phone or using GarageBand, whatever you can get your hands on. Let's say you've gotten past the point of just understanding it, like you really know how this stuff works, and you want to upgrade to something better, like a true actual microphone for recording music or a better program. How do you go about that without wasting money? Again, it's easy to see all those videos online and whatnot talking about, oh, you need this or you need that to make your stuff sound great and just to make it perfect or to be like this artist. But if you take all that at face value, you can put yourself out a ton of money that you otherwise probably wouldn't have needed to. Like I said, there's a lot of quality options out there for microphones that you can get, tons of quality headphones, and just audio interfaces, whatever it is you may need to get started. And even USB microphones or USB and XLR, so you can swap both, eventually buying a audio interface. Those are great options too. So a good way to find out how to do that is by really doing some research. Watch a couple videos on good quality equipment. Edward Smith, he's a music producer and songwriter. He has a YouTube channel that he releases videos on every once in a while. He's got some good videos on microphones, headphones, whatever equipment you may need to get yourself started at a really good price. And he breaks down the pros and cons of each thing. And the videos are normally not that long. So you can watch a couple and, compare what you like, what you don't like, what you need, what you don't need. He's the first person I would think of to recommend for, videos about equipment. But another one would be Tom Buck, who is a podcaster, but also has some good videos on headphones and microphones that you could probably check out and, get some good info out of as well. On top of all that, I'll link all of my equipment down below so you can check out what I use. Most of it is a great price for what you're getting, and it holds up really well and gives great quality audio recordings. If you go under this episode, whether it's on YouTube in the description or on your music or podcasting platform in the show notes, you should see where it will have the different items. I'll have them linked there, Amazon links, but you can look at other websites to find the best deal. I'm just going to put those down there so you can easily at least see the actual equipment. I just want to take a sec to let you guys know, for episode 10, I'm planning on doing a Q&A episode where you guys can submit questions for me to answer about me, my music, or the show, as well as, anything kind of related to those things. It's not so much focused on broad songwriting questions, but if you have more of like a really specific thing that probably wouldn't take a whole episode, you can submit it. And even if you don't know, submit it and then I'll decide if it merits its own episode or if I can just cover it in this Q&A. As of right now, I only have 2 questions submitted, but I really need more because I have a couple weeks until I need to record that. So I really want to get more from you guys. If you're on Spotify, if you scroll to the bottom of the show notes, there should be a link where you can record a voice memo message and send it to me. I'll also include that link separately, so if you're not on Spotify, you'll still be able to access that. If you don't want to send a voice message or just can't, then you can email me, songsmithshow@gmail.com, SONGSMITHSHOW SHOW at gmail.com. Or you can go over to Instagram and DM me there at Songsmithshow as well, just without the at gmail.com. All those are great places to reach me. If you have questions, just comments about the show, whatever, you can reach me in all of those ways, and I'll be sure to respond as soon as possible. I'm really excited for this upcoming episode, and I really hope it works out because I really need those questions sooner than later. I think it'll be really fun to answer any questions you guys have about me, about the show, my music, whatever. So make sure to submit those so I can cover them. And as always, submissions for episode ideas are also welcome. If it's a topic that you think, oh, I don't know that much about, but maybe he could cover, submit it and I'll try and cover it in an upcoming episode. Now back to the topic of the episode. What it really comes down to is understanding what you do and do not need. First and foremost, skill is required. Understanding how to play your instrument, understanding how to sing properly, those are the very first key things you need to learn. Obviously, you might want to start recording even if you don't know that much. And if that is the case, some good options like I talked about were Audacity, which is a Windows and Mac program, GarageBand, Soundtrap. I'll make sure to link all those things below so you can check it out and decide what you maybe would like to work with. Once you start progressing in your skills and getting better at what you do with those things, with your basic voice memos app and your small programs or whatever, maybe you start looking into better DAWs, better microphones, better audio equipment. Some good ways to research that are obviously looking online, comparing prices, comparing specs. Two YouTube channels I would highly recommend are Edward Smith and Tom Buck. I'll link both their channels below. And just make sure that you're content with where you're at. Don't chase after the new fancy spangled equipment just to have whatever this or that person has. Make sure you're at a point where you're like, okay, I understand what I have, and now I believe it's time to upgrade. Do your research so you don't spend tons of money that you really don't need to on high-end equipment when you can spend a lot less, especially when you're starting, on equipment that's really good at a reasonable price. Take it one step at a time. Get things down, learn how they work, and then take another step forward. And eventually, maybe you do have some super high-end equipment, but it all comes one step at a time. If you try and jump the gun and get too far ahead with fancy stuff, then it can be super overwhelming. Now for the episode Songsmith Challenge. At first, I was not really sure as to what I wanted to do for the challenge this episode. I was going to do where you had to record on a lower end equipment or whatever, but I know that isn't necessarily what everybody wants. And again, it's not really a songwriting challenge. So I decided to come up with this. It's another prompt-based challenge. I want you to picture this. It is a midday, maybe between midday and dawn, so the sun is still kind of bright and almost has that morning glow to it, but it's not quite morning. It's in between noon and dawn. Imagine that, and it's just this nice open field, and you have a tree, a nice oak tree, springing up out of the ground. The sun is shining on your face, and you just are basking in that calm, slightly warm, but still comfortable temperature. I want you to think about that. Think about what kind of feeling that gives to you. Take that emotion that you got from that picture, and write about it. Maybe write about that type of scene. Maybe how you want to be in that type of scene. It's a little more abstract and it's a little bit weird maybe, but I thought, hey, why not give it a shot and see how it goes? I also want to say, I know I've been kind of bad about sharing my progress on the Songsmith challenges, and part of it is because I've not done all of them yet. Like I said before, my schedule is extremely busy, and as I've been recording these podcast episodes and working on some other songs I've been, doing, it's made it challenging to do all of that as well as the Songsmith challenges, school, and whatnot. But I'm hoping to get caught up on those as well as release some couple-minute YouTube videos with each of the Songsmith challenges as well as what I did for them. I'm not exactly sure when those are going to be created and released, but sometime in the next couple months, I hopefully will start releasing some of those. I hope you guys have fun with this challenge, and I cannot wait to see what you guys come up with. As usual, you can contact me in all the ways priorly said and show me what you created because I want to see what you guys have been doing. It's a huge encouragement to know that hopefully I'm helping you guys through these challenges and through these episodes. And with that, it's the end of another episode. Just another reminder, Q&A is coming up in 2 episodes. In a couple weeks, I need to record that episode. So if you have any questions you want me to cover in that, make sure to submit them in all the ways I previously mentioned. You can find contact information in the show notes or description if you're on YouTube. As usual, any support you guys can give me is extremely helpful. If you're willing to subscribe on YouTube, follow on your favorite streaming platform, or rate me or give me a star rating. I know several platforms have that. Apple Podcasts has where you can type an actual review. Spotify and Apple Podcasts have where you can put stars. All of that really helps me, especially on Apple Podcasts and YouTube, but Spotify is still super helpful, so I can get on certain playlists and start getting in front of more people to hopefully grow our audience and as well as grow our community of songwriters. Doing all the things, subscribing, liking, all of that stuff is extremely helpful and would really appreciate it. If you want to stay up to date, you can follow me on Instagram at Songsmithshow and get announcements for things coming up in the future, new episode release announcements, as well as so much more fun stuff. This has been episode 8 of Songsmith, skill over gear, and as always, keep writing.